Hey everyone, just wanted to thank you all again for joining us. We had some audio issues, so that's why the show was not able to go live. I was not able to go live. Barely were able to record the conversation, about a 2-hour conversation. I went back through it and took out some of the parts where a lot of my audio was really bad. So it might seem a little bit choppy, but that's because I had to chop it up. So hope it doesn't disrupt everything too much, but it had to be done just for the sake of quality purposes. So for quality reasons, we were able to work through all of our technical difficulties. I was having issues hearing people at some times, and I had to go to my backup audio, which is not the best, did not sound that good. But the good news is that I'll be able to edit the whole thing down, add better, higher res photos. So that's why it's taken me a little bit longer. But I wanted to put this in the front of that video to just kind of explain that. So if it kind of seems like things are chopped or kind of out of place, that is why, is because for certain reasons some of the audio had to be taken out. But it was a really good conversation. I think there was about 4 or 5 of us on the call. So all of you are watching this on YouTube right now. If you're watching it on the premiere of the YouTube video, thank you very much. If you're watching this later on a replay, I want to also thank you too. And again, this was just meant to be a conversation, a very good conversation about item 57, mostly about item 57, a little bit about item 53, and then some of the other group members were asking questions, so we got to just go back and forth on some of the different questions that I think that Stephanie had, if I remember correctly. But I hope you all enjoy this for what it is. I think it was another good conversation. I look forward to our next one. Hopefully the next one will be live. I have done a few things, so I do not anticipate that the issue that I had will happen again. Thankfully, it was not related to any of the fires or anything like that. But I had two choices. I could have either canceled the whole show, which I didn't really want to do because I've already done that a couple times, and I really hate canceling. If you say you're going to do something, if you say you're going to be somewhere, you got to really try. Now, sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes you just can't help it, and you have to postpone, which is fine. That can happen from time to time. But I think about halfway through this call, because everything dropped, so there was a lot in the first 20-30 minutes that you're not going to hear. So the conversation just kind of starts with us just kind of chatting. So that's the reason for that, is because I had to take out so much stuff. But the show must go on, and we've got to keep doing what we can to find truth, to raise the awareness about this case continually, so that the case does not just fall into the black hole, into the void, into the abyss. It is very important to keep this case going, to keep searching for justice, and to do our best, to do our part to get justice for this family, and to get justice for everybody else who has been in similar situations, and to try to do whatever we can so that the officers involved and the officers who are watching this case and have studied this case don't make the same mistakes that were made. I think that's going to be a big victory. So Sophia made the PowerPoint. She pretty much put everything into the PowerPoint, so I'll be using those slides from time to time. You'll see those in there. But I think we were able to make it work and I really enjoyed this conversation. Like I've enjoyed all of them, because they're all kind of different. So we have, I think we did 8 conference calls within the Gray Stage series, and then we did 7. We've done 7 live YouTube streams on the Gray Stage YouTube channel. So those are the newer ones that we've done. This was supposed to be number 8. I don't know if I'm gonna really add it to that list since it technically was not live. But as you can see, you know, there's so much to cover on item 57, and continually there are just more questions. So it's good to hear other people's views. I really enjoy hearing other people's honest, sincere views about item 57, about this case, about what they think happened, what they're open to, what they're not open to, what we've kind of closed the door on. And it's very important to agree to disagree. I mean, those are the most successful members in this group, are the ones who can respectfully agree to disagree on certain things, on different topics. We don't have to agree on everything. You know, my view isn't necessarily the right view, the only view. My view in some regards does change, and members have helped me kind of change some of my views, but for the most part it's pretty much been the same. We do also get a little bit into some of the different theories of what could have happened, what might have happened, and it's very important to put that in the proper context of that we're not trying to accuse anybody of being a part of anything. We're not saying that this is what happened. We are discussing it. We are talking about it. We are playing out these scenarios constantly. And the only difference is, instead of playing it out in our head quietly, separately, we're doing it as a group, as a think tank. And again, not to necessarily accuse anybody of any crimes or anything, but to bounce ideas off of each other. Because sometimes when you hear an idea come out of your mouth, it sounds different. And you know, you might think it, it might sound good in your head when you're thinking it, but when you speak it, sometimes that really helps you kind of flesh out the ideas, the good ideas, and separate the good ideas from the bad ones. So through everything, everybody just kept the conversation going while I was trying to focus on the audio issues on my part that I was having, and I hate that stuff, you know. It's one of the it just reminded me of the old radio days, working in radio, where it's like, man, you just never know, especially going live. Like, once I knew that we weren't gonna go live, once I finally came to grips and stopped trying to go live, then I kind of was able to relax. So I really didn't say too much within the first hour or so, and but also didn't want to try to you know, I mean, I've already made 150 billion videos. What more could I possibly say, right? But there is still a lot more to cover. There's still a lot more that should be talked about in a calm, respectful, polite, sincere, and intelligent way. And I think that's what I've loved about doing these live shows, getting other people's views, is that we're able to do that. And so I do look forward to the next one. I will continue to try to invite people in. I know schedules and dates, and some days work good for people, other days don't. This Sunday, hopefully I'll be on the show with Ross. He's going to have me on his Sunday show, so I'll keep you all posted about that, where that's going to be, where you can listen to it or check it out. I'm not exactly sure how it's going to work out, but Ross was one of the guys. He's been on a couple shows with us too. He was one of the first people to ever do a show with me and Dan Hennon when we were doing it on Google Hangouts. And recently, you know, I've thought about going back, and maybe when I do some replay videos, I'm going to try to test the stream later, but when I try to play back some of those old videos and kind of listen to where we were at, because I think we were really close back in 2015, 2016. there's really not that much that I would go back and say, oh, well, this was wrong. I'm sure there are things that we did get wrong, things that we didn't know, or updates that I would like to have put in there, but really not that much. Our views and our resolve, our quest for truth has not really changed that much. It's always been about finding out what proves David guilty. That's it, and so I'm just really appreciative for everybody who has been very supportive, very helpful, sincere, even when you disagree with views and different points and stuff, and all the people who have really tried to be accepting of other people's different views, and tolerant of other people's views about this case. Sometimes you just have to learn to walk away when things get heated and it becomes my view against your view. That's when I have to kind of walk away from it and not go there, because nobody's going to change my mind, and I'm not going to change anybody else's mind. The facts are what are going to decide what we think is true and what we think is false. That's it. So if you stick with that, then you'll be fine, and you'll go very far in this group. And that's what we really need, pushing forward. This is the big push here. I think there's going to be a big push to continue to fight for truth, to continue to figure out what we can do to get the case reopened. And I do hope that my book can be part of that. That is the whole purpose of this book that I'm writing, The Gray Stage by Greg Fernandez Jr. The book is done. I've made the second payment on the artwork, so that's done. We have confirmed, if I haven't said it before, I might have said it before, but we have 100% confirmed kind of what we already knew, is that the dog feces tests for Paleo were never done, which again then leads back to the whole thing. Well, if the tests weren't done, then how do you know the dog did it, right? And I don't know why the tests weren't done. Should have asked that, but I needed to get a clear, concise answer. Were these tests ever done? And no, they weren't. And I wonder if that bothers the investigators. I wonder if that bothers the people that put their time and effort, the law enforcement people that put their time and effort into this case to try to figure out what happened, because there was a 5-year-old child involved. I can only hope that the investigators would have done everything that they possibly could have without being stonewalled. And if they were stonewalled, if they were told to back up, to not go here, not travel down this path or that path, we should know that too. So once again, I hope everybody enjoys this. I hope you enjoy this show. It's just another show that I hope will get people thinking, people who are kind of new to this case, get them thinking about item 57. Well, that sun is really, really bright in my eyes, so I'm going to duck down here a little bit. Whew. But yeah, item 57, for me has always been the big smoking gun. There are many smoking guns in this case. That's not the only one, but that to me is the big one. And it is, one of the things that we talk about in the show is where the bullet hole was. If we have one image that shows where that bullet hole should have been on January 17th. It's very clear. There's no doubt. Nobody saw that bullet hole. Investigators, any law enforcement, cleanup crew, nobody reported seeing that bullet hole until February 18th when they walked into that house. That was it. So the existence of the bullet hole when the bullet hole was there, when the bullet was there, what the Gray State team were doing in the attic on January 19th, what they were doing in David's house on January 19th, when the cleaners were still cleaning the house on January 20th. That's been another interesting question. So it's question after question after question, and all roads kind of lead to the same thing, to the same answer, that there's just no proof David Crowley is guilty. I think that's a very good starting point. It's not the starting point that I had, but I do believe it is probably where I should have started. But that's just not the way that my mind works. That's not the way that I work. I'd like to give the investigators the benefit of the doubt, pay close attention to what they say, and then see with what they say, what they do, and what the evidence shows. It should all line up. It should all line up, and in this case, it just doesn't. It doesn't. Everything is carefully worded, carefully crafted, so as to give the illusion that David Crowley is guilty, while at the same time not 100% accusing him of being guilty. I mean, I shouldn't say 100% accusing, 100% proving. I mean, what do they really do to prove that David Crowley is guilty, besides the fact of just blaming, well, since there's nobody else and it had to be him. The process of elimination, I guess, would be the big word for it. But it was, the show started out rough. I think it ended very, very well. We went about 2.5 hours. Some of that did have to get cut because of audio issues, so that's why you will hear at certain times, different audio problems. But I just wanted to put this little introduction here first so that everybody kind of understands why the call begins with just people talking, and then we kind of jump into item 57 and discuss whatever. That's the other purpose of these calls, is for you to just say whatever you want to say, whatever you have been wanting to ask, whatever you have been wanting to run by other people. That's where this, we're trying to give everybody a forum for that, everybody in the group. So, hope you all enjoy, and I hope you'll come back. I'm going to try to, next Thursday, we're going to try it one more time. We'll try to go again, finish up with anything that we did not get a chance to cover. But I think we pretty much covered everything that we wanted to cover in this show. And then next we're going to talk about, very interesting, an article that a member sent me, and I found out other members of the group have also read this one. It's a very interesting article about staging crime scenes, and I think it's a big topic. So we were going to include it in this show, and Catherine suggested that it would probably be good as its own show, and I think she's totally right. So we'll try to make that its own show. I'll try to put out the PDF document. It's about maybe 13 pages or so. It's really, really good. Written by 2 former FBI investigators. One is no longer with us, died a couple years ago, I think 2016. The other one is still with us. So who knows, maybe we can reach out to him. But the article, I think, is very, very good, and covers all the different things about different crime scenes and how to stage crime scenes and how to find if a crime scene is staged. So hopefully we can read through that, and then we can see if there's any similar things with this case here. Make sure to, we got the new WordPress site. I've gone back to my old WordPress site. whatistruth911.wordpress.com is where I'm moving all of my GregFernandezJr.com stuff. So, and then the graystage.wordpress.com is where that site is just completely dedicated to this case. Once the book is out, that's where I'll probably have the book where you can download it directly from that site. we'll work on some other things too, but just want to give everybody a quick update on that and say thank you all again. All of your support has been greatly appreciated. I mean, greatly appreciated. You know, it keeps us going, and it gives us that extra drive that we really need to push a little harder, to push a little further, and to keep hope alive, keep truth going. You know, that's all that we can really do with whatever you think happened with David, whatever it is, to get justice for him, for his wife, and for his daughter. That's the whole point here. So God bless you all. Hope you all enjoyed this, and see you next week. Live, most likely. Most likely we'll be live next week.
You've got this item 57 that, you know, they were looking at the ground the whole time they were there, and then they left. The police left, had to come back to find the bullet in the carpet, which that was linked to Ranny, right?
Mm-hmm.
Body's found on the 17th. Cleaners are still working. Item 53 is not discovered until January 20th. Item 53 is the bullet that is tied to Rania. That's the one that rolled out of the carpet.
Oh, okay, that was the one
20th.
in the carpet.
Yeah. So, you got some big problems there.
I wasn't too clear on what the difference is between the nuclear DNA they found on item 57 versus blood and tissue.
We'll pick up sweat, skin cells, saliva. It will pick up other types of DNA.
Shouldn't his DNA be like all over that house though?
It should be. He lives there. His fingerprints
Right,
should be all over the house too.
Like everywhere.
I mean,
like his, Kamel's, and
sneezing.
Ranny's, yeah, coughing, that's his house. It should be everywhere in there. His fingerprints should be literally on every surface. Because, I mean, you can see in the pictures there's, like, dust in a lot of different places. And, I mean, how's his DNA not everywhere?
It's
How is it
lacking?
Right.
If you did not know that David actually lived in that house, you would have assumed that it belonged to Kamel only. I mean, Rainey's DNA is found on only a couple items, maybe 3 at the most. David's, I think, was, Greg, about 3, 4 items out of all the things that they tested?
Yeah.
If that.
Looking through all the pictures, there are quite a bit, I'm noticing, little, like, bone fragments here and there.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't quite put together if they're, like, tiny skull pieces or... Because in some of the pictures, it actually does look like maybe it's part of a finger bone. But I can't quite make that leap because I can't find it in any of the reports, like what they are.
Yeah.
In the autopsy reports, they talked about how they collected skull pieces, phalanges, which is finger bones, and jaw pieces. So they actually do discuss it. I believe it's external evidence because they put it in brown paper bags. So you might find it in those areas. And all the autopsy reports are in the group.
In order to say paleo for sure did it, you would have to take all the feces all through that house and test them. Yeah. They would have had to test his stomach contents. And they didn't. They didn't test any of that. There should have been, from everything I've seen with other suicide cases, there should have been swabs done on his left hand. I mean, maybe I've got that wrong because of how, decomposed the bodies are, but from every other suicide case I've seen where a gun was involved, they swabbed the body to prove that, yes, this is the person that fired the gun. And I don't
even do that.
Yeah, I don't see anywhere where they said, okay, David had gunshot residue on him. This is why we believe. You know, it specifically says after going through all the digital evidence, they can't find a motive. So did they just do that with the rest of this? Because that's what it looks like to me, is they were just like, yeah, it's not worth all the paperwork. It's not worth all the waiting. We'll just go ahead and close this. I don't think it makes any kind of sense, especially given the fact that he was right-handed and supposedly he shot himself with his left hand. But then the bullet is that, you know, quote unquote, killed him, his bullet, was not in the right position when you look at where the bullet was in the attic versus, or excuse me, the bullet hole in the ceiling in the living room versus where his body position is, unless he was moved.
Correct.
Unless he's moved.
If he was moved, you could definitely say that, yep, that's you know, the shot that killed him. But you can't say he's the one who shot himself because it doesn't line up.
And the fact that that type of bullet would gather tissue, it would gather skin and hair.
Well, with the shots to Kamel, there was blood and tissue for sure on her bullets.
Yeah, you could clearly see it.
So why wasn't it the same case for David? Because, you know, even going through a ceiling and a wall, that should still have some sort of minute blood and tissue on it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no logical reason why it doesn't.
It would still be in those petals and everything.
Yes,
the little things
still be
that
on it.
Once it mushrooms, it still would be in those little grooves and stuff. So it just doesn't make sense.
Why did they leave? Like I think the report said they had 6 shell casings, but they didn't have all of the bullets.
Right. They had, I think it was 4 bullets and 6 casings.
So how did they leave without those 2 other bullets and knowing where they were? Why did they leave?
You mean why didn't they keep looking for them, or do you think that they? Knew,
Why didn't they keep looking for them? David's dad, Dan Sr., he didn't live in the same town, right, as David and Kamel? He lived in a different town?
Right,
Mm-hmm.
he's in Owatonna.
Okay, so I had a question as far as why Dan Jr. was the one dropping the presents off when they were from both Dan Jr. and Dan Sr.
Well, I can't understand them leaving that big a check outside on the porch either.
Right. Yeah, that was my biggest issue with it, is that's quite a chunk of money. You're just going to leave it on the doorstep and not, like, knock or look in the windows or see if they're there or call.
People do steal gifts off the front porches, and we know that.
Oh, my goodness. My mail people, when we first moved into the house we're in, they were like, where do you want us to put your packages? I was like, what do you mean? I have a front porch. And they were like, well, you know, sometimes there's theft. So it's like, oh, okay. I guess you could put them, you know, over on this porch, the side porch here. Oh, that's a good idea. That way they're out of the way. So how is it anywhere logical that he would leave that big of a check
Right.
on the doorstep and not even, like, call and be like, hey, just wanted to let you know I didn't want to bother you, but we had these presents we wanted to get to you guys, and you should probably get them off your porch ASAP. But he doesn't. He
No.
just, like, leaves them and books.
Yep.
That to me was suspicious.
Yeah, it's all set up.
And I think Dan Jr. at that time was either in St. Paul or Minneapolis. I can't remember exactly where, but he was heading back from his dad's when he dropped it off.
Right? We have the image. We have the one image that shows where the bullet hole should be.
Mm-hmm.
You're not seeing it there? I see it there. Looks like it's there to me.
Well, if this is the one from the very first day, I can't see it.
I couldn't either.
I saw a video Catherine did where she shows, like under a bunch of different filters, one of the pictures of the ceiling, and it does, to me, look like there is maybe a slight shadow there, but I can't for sure say if that's a bullet hole or not. But I would imagine that if they took a picture where you can kind of see, you know, what could possibly be a bullet hole in the ceiling, I don't understand why whoever took the picture, wouldn't have gone over and taken a better picture of it to make sure they have it documented. Because, you know, they did the whole thing with the vacuum where it was in the closet and they moved it out of the closet and then it was back in the closet and all kinds of other stuff. David's ring on the coffee table was there in one picture and then not there in another picture, and then all of a sudden it's back. And there's so many different things that I don't understand why they took pictures of them. And then other things that I want those pictures, but I don't even know if those pictures exist.
And even if that bullet hole is there the day that the bodies were discovered, it still does not line up with David's body position of how he was found.
That's true. That's very true.
Unless
it doesn't,
Paleo
unless he was moved. I thought it was really rather odd that it was mostly in the living room and then the basement. Like there are a couple here and there in other places, but the majority of the dog poop is like right there in the living room area and then down in the basement. One could conclude with that he was kept in the basement for a period of time, and then he was let out of the basement, and, you know, seeing his family that he loves, you know, I've read tons of different articles about, you know, dogs finding their owners dead, and, you know, they lay up next to the body, and sometimes, yes, it's disgusting to think about. Sometimes they do scavenge, and I am not by any means saying that Paleo did not scavenge, because I feel like, you know, it is very possible that he did. But the things they're accusing him of scavenging are not possible. It's impossible for him. Exactly. Where's the whole arm? Where are the three hands and the faces? If you're going to say this dog ate these pieces and that's why they're not here, then you better be testing his stomach contents and all those little different dog poops all around that house to find the bone in it, to prove he did it 100%. Because otherwise, you're just blowing smoke up everybody's ass. Excuse me.
It's not just the external stuff, too. He's credited, the dog is credited with the internal things. He's credited with eating the brain. He's credited with eating a lot of this different stuff that, you know, the tongue, the larynx, all this stuff that is missing. When you read it, they're implying, and I would say heavily implying, that the dog ate all of that.
Yeah.
But they
throat,
can't officially
everything.
conclude that if they don't have tests to back it up.
Correct. But if nobody
You know-
challenges them on it, right, and that's why we're here challenging them on this. But if nobody was, correct, they would, everyone would just think, well, the dog did it. That's it. I don't think that's the
Well,
case now,
That much damage, don't you think there would have been brain damage, brain matter all over the place?
Yeah.
You would think it would be quite obvious if he did eat all of that. It would be in his poop. It wouldn't look normal. It would be disgusting.
I think there's one photo where you can see some dried brain matter.
And one with hair in it.
That's over by Camille's foot, right in that area, and it's just a little bit.
On that brown chair, you can see a little bit of what looks to me like brain matter, and then definitely hair. And then there's that Surface Pro, the laptop, is like pink and black. There was what looked to me like either brain matter or blood spatter or something. And then there are a few places where it shows in the pictures you can see the clumps of hair, and there's what looks like either skin or some kind of like scalp and bloody stuff connected to hair.
Yeah.
But I don't think Paleo could have ripped her hair off in such a straight. There's some of those clumps of hair that look exactly like they were cut.
Right.
Because
could it be from decomposition?
Yes. I don't know though.
I have a hard time with such a short amount of time given to the decomposition in some cases, because 3 weeks you would definitely see the hair coming off and stuff like that. It's going through those changes. And your body does go through a second bloat. It goes through the first bloat, and then near the end, before you start skeletalizing, you go through a second bloat. I don't want to say that some people are wrong. I'm just saying that you can go through a second bloat, and it does take a while for your hair to come detached from the scalp and everything.
If you take run your finger through your hair, the hair that comes off onto your hand is going to be relatively straight because it fell out naturally. If you take a couple of your hairs and yank them out and then look at them, they're going to be somewhat curly because of the force, it takes to rip them out. And to me, it doesn't look like those hairs were ripped out. There's a very clean cut on a good few chunks of that hair. And that doesn't make sense unless she was scalped.
And there is a knife at the crime scene.
Yes, it's open. And that was another thing I thought was crazy, because you've got that one picture where you can see it open, and then all of a sudden it's in a box. So they don't want us to see. Yeah, why would David scalp her? What's the point in that?
Let's think logically. He's using hollow points, number one. Number two, there are at least 2 bullets that went through her head, if not 3. She would not have a head left to scalp.
Right.
So is it possible it was done before she was shot?
Yeah.
Because I was thinking, as far as trying to piece together how exactly this happened, even putting myself into the narrative of, okay, if David did this, he's got to collect that blood from her to write on the wall. Her hands are missing. So that would definitely be that would kill her. Cutting off both her hands like that would definitely have killed her. So she had to have been
incapacitated.
It's in some way, yes. In some way incapacitated, yes. And, that was another thing. I find it insanely weird that David was cremated. I find it insanely weird because if you were to try and go back, like say we got the case opened, and you were to try and go back and get his body exhumed to test it, like succinylcholine is, you guys know what that is? That succinylcholine is a drug they use to, like, during anesthesia. And in large doses, it can kill you. That's why it is such a controlled substance. But there have been cases where people who worked in the medical field in, some aspect, for some reason, just snapped one day and decided to give it to, their husband or their wife or something. And at the time that the person died, nobody suspected anything. But then years later, somebody began asking questions, and the body was exhumed. And I don't quite remember if they found traces of the succinylcholine in the body or if it was in, like, live samples that were frozen or something. But if you want to get rid of any kind of evidence on a body, like of somebody being drugged or, given something to incapacitate them, you burn it. That way there is absolutely no way that anybody can exhume them and relook at the body.
Right on.
Yeah, I've even told my daughter in the past, before this case even happened, that if I was ever murdered, that I was to be embalmed and buried. If I died naturally, then cremated. Because
I always had a joke that I want to be cremated and I want my ashes spread over, some field when around where I lived when I was little. But the older I've gotten, I really don't want to be cremated. I really don't. I would really like to go in a box, and that way if there's ever any question about how I died, I could just be dug back up. But with David, we can't do that. We can't do that because he's dust.
I'm going to ask a really dumb question here, and I would look it up right now if I could get online, but I'm scared because of my bandwidth right now. But this is really stupid. I feel really dumb for asking this, but
the only dumb question is one you don't ask.
Okay, then this will be a great one.
Okay.
Is it possible to based on his can you do a DNA test or DNA sample, something like that, based on it with his ashes, or is that just totally?
I don't even know.
I don't think so.
They would be able to test not DNA, but they would be able to test his. Actually, yeah, they would if there was a large enough bone piece, or they would if there was a large enough bone piece. But lately, more recent cremations, they pulverize the ashes.
So it kind of depends on how he was cremated?
Mm-hmm. They would be able to test the bone that's in there for heavy metals, for instance, lead or arsenic, that kind of thing. But I honestly don't know if they'd be able to do DNA tests. It just depends on how fine his ashes are.
I had when I spoke with Cidra's friend, and she was going to get back the ashes for Rania, and I had asked them, is there a way? Make sure that you're really getting back her ashes. Don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's a uncomfortable thing to think about, but just because somebody gives you ashes 2 years later
doesn't mean they're the ones
later,
that. Yeah,
Right.
I can see that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Sometimes they cremate 2 and 3 bodies at the same time,
Oh.
according to where you go.
That is awful.
So you never know.
Well, they do the same thing for pets, too. And so anytime I have a cat pass away, it hasn't happened lately, but in the past, I ask for a single cremation for them. Because I want my pet
Paulette
back.
Here? Has Paulette joined us? I couldn't tell, because there is another number, but I can't tell if it's...
She said that she was on. Paulette, are you there?
I'm here.
Oh,
Hi
hey.
there.
Just listening.
Awesome. All right. Well,
I'm
if you
glad
want to
you
jump
made
in,
it.
or if you got anything you want to bring up or just chat about, bring it on up.
Have any of you guys seen any other murder cases or suicide cases even where the body fell in that position that David was in?
No.
Personally, me, no.
No.
There's a case of Philip Marshall, and it's a very similar case in many different ways for many different reasons. But the gun, they say he shot himself with the gun inverted, and I think he used his right hand to shoot himself on the left side or something, and the gun was found underneath him. So there was no way for anybody to really prove who had shot what because of the blood, et cetera, et cetera. I was expecting to find something similar in this case, and the fact that we didn't really, that's still one of the big things. That gun is one of the big keys there, and the lack of proof that they can even tie to that gun, that they can tie David to that gun, is very disturbing, and I think will also help us get this case reopened one day.
Did they ever find David's fingerprints in the blood on the wall? Even partials or anything?
No.
I keep meaning to look that up.
No, they didn't find any fingerprint. There were no latent fingerprints found on that wall. But if you read the first responders, the first police officers that walk into that house, they clearly state that there was blood in fingerprints. So I don't know.
I was looking at that wall, and it looks to me I know there was another video where somebody had mentioned this, but it does look to me like there is blood spatter on top of the letters.
Yes, yeah,
But I cannot figure out how that fits.
Well, I think the video first. There was one video that said that there was a bullet hole. It was a bullet hole. I don't think it was a bullet hole, but I do think it was, probably blood or something like that got on that top. That's like an 8-foot, 9-foot ceiling. So, either somebody really, really tall, or they took a stool and moved the whole couch and everything. But it was weird that the lack of blood on the couch, I think, raised a lot of people's eyebrows too. It's like just one thing after another. If you look at these things all separately, sure, it's just like, it's a little bit of this, but you start adding all this stuff up, and it's just
right.
It's
Yes.
not like we're trying to poke holes in what the cops say. We're just trying to understand why they believe David Crowley is guilty, and all of these things do not lead me or you or anybody else really to believe that David Crowley is guilty. You have to take a leap of faith, a giant leap of faith, to believe that David Crowley is guilty, and I'm just not ready to take that leap of faith. I'm never going to be ready to take that leap of faith, because in a case like this, where there's so many weird things, you have a young couple, first of all. You have one who was not born in this country. You have a young child. You have a U.S. soldier right there should be, wait a minute, we need to treat this a little bit differently. Let's put in a little more time than we might normally do. And then you have a filmmaker who was about to make this big leap, his leap of faith. That was, everything that he was building for came crashing down. And so it's disturbing. It's very disturbing.
And the friends all tried to say that, well, he did this because, the deal was over and his dream, he realized his dream wasn't going to come true. But that's not true. That is a blatant lie. If you look at his financial records, they were not at all trying to, scrimp and save for anything. There's the Mikes who both said no. We were still talking about the deal. I think they had like an unofficial agreement or something that they were still going to go ahead with this with David.
Yeah.
That if you pick and choose, if you pick apart little bit all these things that we're looking at, and you look at just those things separately, you can follow, okay, yeah, it's possible he did it. But if you put them all together instead of looking at it all separately, that's where the problems start, because none of it leads to David doing it with all these little tiny factors involved. The missing hands, the missing arm, the missing faces and neck, and the dog that, we just decided he and David are the culprits here because, that's just what it seems like. We don't want to look too deep into this.
I think there was a lot of anger involved.
That's what it looks like. It looks like whoever did this was just so incredibly angry at David and Kamel and Ranny that they felt they had no other way to get what they wanted. And I honestly have not, if somebody was to come to me or message me or call me and give me absolute concrete proof, like absolutely not even a shadow of a doubt David did this, I would believe it if they could prove it to me. But so far, the only way, I feel like Greg has run into this too, well, actually all of you probably, the only way they can try and convince us is to say, just leave it alone. If you just leave it alone, it all makes sense. Don't ask questions. You'll never know why. Nobody will know why. Just leave it alone. Just let it go. But that's not an answer. That's not an answer. That's not any kind of concrete proof that David did it. You can't kill yourself and then hide hands or an arm. You can't kill yourself and then move over so that you don't match up, with where you are. Now, it is possible, I think, maybe that Paleo did move the bodies a little bit, but there's no way he flipped Kamel over and ate her hands and her face and then flipped her back over. And there's no way that he moved David into that crucifix position. The only way all of this fits is if there is somebody else who committed the crime. The only way any of this case information makes sense is if you add in one or more people who came in and committed this crime and pointed it at David.
It had been
that
more
makes
than one.
sense. I think maybe I really feel like there was at least 3. At least.
Well, I mean, the bigger issue, maybe not the bigger issue, but another issue is just the whole
the amount of cover-up that would have had to have been involved here on some level from the Apple Valley police, not all of them, not saying all of them, just at the highest level, but the media too, at a in not just the mainstream media, but the alternative media too. It's just one of the weirdest things that I've ever seen. One of the weirdest cases, the way that Hagman, Mr. Hagman, this is what he said way back when this first happened. It's like he wasn't too mad at the mainstream media. He was upset at the alternative media because it's like you guys have turned your back on this, and it was just like, I don't know if things just got too real for certain people or if they were like, they were keyboard warriors and all of a sudden, you're not in front of a keyboard now. We're talking about real people that this is one of the worst possible things that people who research the deep state, who research conspiracies, September 11th, John F. Kennedy, on and on and on. This is one of the worst things that could possibly happen. So I think it does scare some people. But, I mean, if you've been researching this, if you understand this, and if you have, if you're not fearful, and it's just like, what are you scared of? What are you doing here? And that's just been that's been one of my biggest.
There's also been like a lack of interest in this, in the way that so many people watch the Gray State Sloppymentary and accept what Eric Nelson is proposing as true.
I think that's the perception, and that's what they've used, the media for. That's what they've used all of these people who have come out for that. I think that's the perception that the people in control have tried to create. But for us real people, as long as us real people can get all of the facts about this case, we can clearly see that what they're saying is just simply not true. And that's been the biggest challenge, is to get this research, to get this knowledge in as many people's hands as possible so that they can make a real informed decision about what they truly believe about this case without bias, taking their bias out.
And that's the biggest thing with this case is the majority of people who do ask questions and look further into this, we are all completely willing to accept David did this as long as there is concrete proof to back it up. That's all we're asking for. If David did this, if these people all believe David did this, why can they not prove it to us with evidence? Instead, they've all just, they're all a bunch of conspiracy theorists over there, and we're all, the people who actually knew them, I was the neighbor and I was the friend, and, you guys just need to let it go because you're all just being crazy. But, you've got people like us who are like, well, if you think he did it, show me why you think he did it. And that's where they stop, because they can't. Not one of them has been able to show anybody, without a shadow of a doubt, concrete proof that David did this.
Well, it's not that they stop. That's when they start the personal attacks.
See, I haven't gotten any of that yet, and I'm so scared of it. I'm
just
so
wait
scared
a
of
little
it.
bit. You'll be up.
Bring it on, Mark. Just bring that here. Bring it on. But there's no reason to go after anybody else.
No, there's really not, because if we're all wanting the same thing, we're all wanting the same answers to the same questions, none of us should be fighting with one another. None of us should be, angry and lashing out at one another. I am completely open to, the people who think that, maybe this was a government hit. Okay, I can see why you think that. That makes a lot of sense why you think that. I personally, I will need more proof to believe it was a government hit. I'm not quite that much into conspiracies, you know, and that's just me personally. But then you've got the people who say, oh, it was a demon. There was demon possession. Okay, all right, I can understand that too, as far as, you know, the videos shown of Kamel where she was like hearing things and whatnot. I can kind of understand that. But with all these different theories about this case, the biggest issue is the lack of evidence. I mean, we all have a bunch of evidence showing why David didn't do it, how he couldn't have. But we're the crazy ones.
Or that they say that they've seen the evidence, but they can't post it.
Well, if you've seen it and you're not a family member, how did you get it? That's what I want to know.
Well, it's called secret knowledge, and only chosen few have it.
Oh,
what it actually is complete and utter bullshit.
Yes.
Sorry, kids.
Right. First, you must think that David Crowley is guilty, and then we will share the evidence. Really, what it's been is it's been they've been using it to silence people, to say, you know what, if you just keep your mouth shut, don't talk about it in public, we will show you what the evidence is. And I guarantee you, all the people that sold out and fell for that, they haven't been shown anything. All they've been shown is what fools they were to just accept that certain people who are not trustworthy people, shady people, are going around telling you all you need to know is that David Crowley is guilty. Really. Really, after all of this time, after everything that David Crowley did, I mean, it is just, there's so many different layers to this, and so many just disgusting things that have happened.
It really is a rabbit hole. It really is, because the deeper you look into this, the more and more questions you're left with. Like everybody was saying before the documentary came out by Eric Nelson, oh, as soon as you see it, you'll know, you'll get it. It'll make sense. You know, okay? You'll know as soon as you see this movie. So just make sure you see it. And I really didn't know much about this case. Like, I had seen it a little bit in the news, but I didn't really pay much attention to it because, you know, I just chalked it up to, okay, he must have snapped. But I didn't ask any questions at that point. And so I saw the documentary, and then the documentary left me with a bunch of questions. So then I went back and I started looking further into it, and it just, the deeper you go, the more questions you're left with, and you're left with more questions than answers. I really don't understand how any case could get solved by people not asking questions. That's how
anything about this that makes any sense at all.
Yes.
Nothing.
And you send off FOIAs expecting to finally get the answer for something, and the information comes back, and you have 100 more questions, and no answers to the other questions that you asked.
Well, you didn't word it right. You got to...
Well, the last FOIA that we got, it was a documentation dump, and oh my gosh, I think I'll be looking at that file for a couple more years. It's just so much information. But
there's got to be... Sorry, go ahead, Greg.
No, go ahead.
There's got to be one of those investigators or somebody that was at that crime scene the day the bodies were found that after all these years has still had that gut-wrenching feeling that this was not right. And if even just one of those people felt that way and was willing to publicly say, yeah, I agree, I think that would help get the case reopened. Or maybe, if we could get a family member or somebody close to them to say, hey, you know, I want it opened again. I want to know what happened. Because that's got to be awful for the families. You know, if they actually read all of the police reports and looked at all of the evidence, I mean, I don't want to think that they would just believe this and just let it go.
I think they were very sheltered. You know, the more that I look into it, it seems like they were very sheltered. It was a very controlled environment that they were under, almost this like bubble that they were kept in purposely. So they might not know about a lot of this stuff. I doubt that they've read half of the stuff that we've all read. And it's all public stuff. It's stuff that they could get, that they could ask for. Now, if they ask for it and they find resistance, then maybe that will, you know, spark that more. But, you know, it's one of the things that I try to constantly pray about, is that one day somebody from the family or one of those cops that was there or somebody that was involved in this will understand, you know, how serious this is and that there's something wrong. And we need justice. The family needs justice. They need real justice. And are they still in danger? You know, is this deeper than just David Crowley? Is there something more deeper involved? Is it more related to something that somebody on one of the sides of the family did? You know, I don't know. It's just it does not make sense. Even a police cover-up to me does not make sense. It's just like every scenario does not make sense. And I play them all in my mind over and over and over again. But I think the one thing that we all know does not make sense is that David Crowley is guilty. So if it's not that, it has to be something else.
Well, we are a few select people, so we're not going to give it up.
That's right.
That's the thing. As long as we all still ask questions, as long as there's at least one person going, no, I don't think he did it, you know, I feel like that's at least a small victory.
I think it's a big victory. Yeah. No, it is. I mean, we've had many of them. We just don't stop and, you know, really recognize how many victories that we have had in just trying to get justice for this family and trying to find out what really happened. I think we have had a lot of silent victories.
Well, I know if that was my family, I sure wouldn't have gave up.
No, I wouldn't. But see, that's just me. Yeah, I mean, that's right. Just, you know, this group, like, I guess, you know, they're all perfectly content letting it go, which that doesn't make sense to me.
The slide presentation is covering David's body position, the ceiling bullet hole, item 57, which is the attic bullet. I included photos of the living room because so that we could kind of talk about the angle that David was laying in and that stuff. And then I also included DNA reports for that bullet, ballistics reports, and item 31 because it went along with the ballistics report.
I just want to say one last thing about the family. You know, I still think it's possible that the family has not accepted what has happened. And I do believe that that's why people are trying to keep us as far away from the family as possible, to make us look as crazy as possible, so that they will never contact us, so that they will always think that we're crazy people who are trying to make money off of their family's death, when in reality, the Gray State team are the only ones who have made money off of this death. Besides Eric Nelson and, anyone who was involved with that, they made money off of this. Every time that
look at Dan Hennon. He put up $7,000 of his own money to hire without question. He didn't tell everybody, well, if you guys can all give me this money, we'll hire one. No, he said, I'm paying for this, and if you guys want to help, I would appreciate it, but if you can't, don't worry about it. Nobody in our group has asked for any kind of money whatsoever in trying to figure out what happened with this case. And that is such bullshit, because the people who have made money on this are the ones who aren't asking questions. They're not. They're not asking what happened to, the police walked out of there without finding David's bullet and had to come back. Like, they didn't even know it was there. Somebody else told them about it.
Twice. They had to come back,
It kills me that I've watched that documentary so many times, but I noticed the more times I've watched it, I've noticed more and more things, like the way Dan Jr. talks, and the way Dan Sr. talks. I think Dan Sr. is just looking at the way he is in that documentary, and I wish I could see all of the footage that went into making that, because really they made you, Greg, and Dan look just crazy. And they went through all these interviews with all these people and then cut and pasted where they wanted it to match their narrative, and that's it. That's all they used. I want to see all the other stuff, because Dan Sr., when he's reading wherever that came from, whether it was actually David's journal or something somebody else gave to him, when he's reading that, he does not look like he believes it. Like, he's got this very, to me, this very monotone voice, like you'd be reading a page out of the dictionary. Like, it does not seem to me like he believes what he is reading in that.
I would have to agree.
Maybe that's, I don't know. And then Dan Jr., when he's talking about Ranny, where he's like, she was my dream girl, like as a daughter, or however he put it. That to me was creepy.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it was cut.
The way.
Yeah. It was the way that it was cut.
I hope it was cut. I hope it was cut, because otherwise he seems like a creep the way he talks about her there.
But they might have purposely cut it to make it look like that. That's, you know what I mean? Like, the same way that I could tell that they cut stuff that I said. The only thing they use is the one thing that they were constantly.
I don't give a damn about credibility.
Right. Which was all. That all went back to my conversation with Sean Wright. So it was focused on that. All of their questions, everything that they were trying to get me to do was to talk bad about Sean Wright. I could tell.
And you wouldn't have known any of that from your clip in that movie, because
right.
There's none of the rest of anything you said.
From their point, they were probably like, oh, okay, we have him saying that he's not a credible source, which is all.
Yep.
This is what they've been trying to do with all of us, is to just get people to not take us seriously, and it's just not working. It really isn't.
If anything, it really points the finger back onto them, because you've got Judy, who is, slandering anybody and everybody who doesn't believe the official narrative, because she's the know-it-all, because, her husband saw the bodies first. So
because that
then
obviously
the
gives her
spotlight is
credibility.
on her. So then you start digging into her and you find out she's got a son who was arrested with a shit ton of pot. And
Yes.
he presented a Homeland Security ID. So, I mean, does she really want that? That's what it seems like to me, is she's trying to get more attention on her than anything when, Jesus, I wouldn't want it if I was her. If I had found my neighbors like that, I would not, I would want to talk to the police, and that's it. I wouldn't want to talk to anybody else. I would want to forget it, because she didn't even know them. She had to ask her husband for the address. Colin Prochnow, he talked to David more than Judy ever did.
But yet
So
they knew everything.
Right. But they knew, Judy knew everything about it. She knew so much, in that first 911 call, or maybe it was the second 911 call, where she was like, and it looks like the dog may have, eaten them. Or no, she said it looks like they've been eaten, which I suppose that could be the dog, or something to that effect. How did she know that?
Really?
And this is where I've said in the past, it almost seems like somebody handed her a script. And I'm just, the way that she goes through and clicks off every box, that's what it sounds like. Was she handed a script? Probably not. But that's what it sounds like.
But see, I've had questions about her son from day one.
Mm-hmm.
He was supposed to have been there around that time.
That's right. Well, he was there. He was there.
Yeah.
But he was. I don't think he was ever questioned, right? I mean.
And I think
Why wouldn't they question him if he was there, though?
Because they didn't know he was there.
I think he left before the bodies were found.
Okay. Slide number 2 is just a it's just a diagram, correct, of the living room?
It's a rough drawing, yeah. And it looks like it was made pretty early on too. On the 17th.
And I added this because I wanted everybody to see the direction of the bodies and which way David was laying.
Which is a little bit different. It's a little bit different than the way that the bodies are laid, because in the actual image, David's left hand is more spread out. But maybe they're drawing that as kind of a curvature kind of thing to show that the left hand was kind of curved up because it was up, meaning it was like stiff, right? And you could kind of see his hand. His hand was in a weird spot too, and I'll try to add that in here too.
Now, is that like normal as far as body decomposition goes? Like with his hand being in the position it was? Because if they were really in there for 3 weeks, you would think that that's 3 weeks is well past rigor mortis, I would think.
Mhm.
So maybe I'm wrong in thinking this, but I would think that his hand would have relaxed
By that point.
Yeah, by the time they were found, I would think it would have relaxed out of that position.
Yeah, and the other thing is that's weird, because like when you look at Kamel, it seems like that is very accurate to what all of the documents say about how her right hand is kind of over her head, where her head should be, and her left hand is underneath her left hip, basically.
So how did Paleo get it? How did Paleo? get to them if they were in that position.
Don't know.
Because that would definitely be suspicious to me. You know, we're saying a dog did this, but for him to be able to access that, he would have had to have rolled her back over when he was done. Like, rolled her over, ate the parts, and then rolled her back over. And clearly, he can't do that. So,
well, he definitely can't do that if the daughter is right on top of her left leg.
That's what I was
which is
thinking.
where the daughter was.
right, because Ranny would have rolled right along with her if it was Paleo that was moving her. And honestly, that's odd to me, too, that they would say that the dog ate all of these things when, I mean, in the photo of the bodies that I saw, Ranny's stomach is exposed. That is such soft tissue that you would think if he was hungry enough to want to scavenge off those bodies, he would go for the softest parts first.
Slide number 3 is just, I need to enlarge it. It is coming straight from the BCA report, and it's talking, no, not the BCA, the Apple Valley report, and it's talking about the bullet hole in the ceiling. And it says, a hole was observed in the living room ceiling near the front entry. Characteristics of the hole and its surrounding area indicates a projectile was traveling generally west to east as it entered the ceiling and exited in the attic. A bullet, item 57, was collected in the attic vicinity of the hole.
But you see, in one of those investigative reports said that one of those policemen stuck his finger through that hole too.
And I think I have a photo where they were measuring that hole too.
Where you can see the gloved hand and there's like a finger in it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's one of the photos that I included.
Yeah, I first thought that he had put his finger through that hole. I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not so sure if he. The way that it was written was kind of weird. I think I might have misunderstood it. He might not have put his finger through that hole, but
that's what it said.
I have to go back and look at that.
That's what it said.
I thought when I was looking at that photo, I thought maybe it was there for either a size comparison or maybe he had stuck his finger in the hole to feel if he could feel the bullet.
Oh, that might be
we'll have to
possibility.
Go. Yeah. Do you know what document and page that was on, Pansy? Or
no,
sir. Find that. Yeah.
It was back when it was back when they went back to get that bullet.
I think it was in the Apple Valley report.
I have my Dropbox open. Let me go see if I can find it.
He may have been just trying to figure out which way that bullet was headed.
But then they wrote that his body position was something and then southeast.
Correct.
And that doesn't line up with where the bullet hole is unless he was moved.
Yeah, that's
well, to me it don't line up.
Yeah, it shows the feet northwest, head area to southeast. So his feet were northwest and the head was southeast. Okay.
And if David was standing when he supposedly committed suicide and the bullet exited the left, it probably would have taken out that living room window.
Yeah, that was another thing I was thinking about. How, though, you said it entered the left side?
No, it exited the left side.
It exited, so then he couldn't have shot himself.
And had that bullet over the other direction.
Yeah, because if he shot himself with his right hand, I could see it exiting the left side. But if he's shooting with his left hand, it should have exited the right side.
But they don't know, right? They don't. I mean, if we look at slide number 5 that you have here, the gunshot wound of the head, they don't know where it started. They can only say it went out the left parietal bone and scalp.
Correct. But even if it did go out the left side, it still couldn't have ended up in the attic. Not with the way that he was laying.
Not with where
unless
his, yeah.
somebody went in there and moved his body.
That's the only conclusion I see, because if he shot himself in the head and then just fell back into this position, his body should line directly up with where that bullet hole is, if that was his bullet that killed him. Because it could just be that it had his nuclear DNA on it, because, I mean, it's his house. He lives there, so his DNA should be all over that place. His fingerprints should be all over that place.
Correct.
David's, Kamel's, and Ranny's DNA should have been all over that place. And then they've got the 2 samples of unknowns. That should have been immediately tested, because I would think that right there would show somebody else was in the house. Because, see, we're supposed to go along with the narrative that David secluded himself and his family for months from everybody, just cut everybody off, and then that's, when he did this, when he committed this crime, is after he pushed everybody away. But if you're going to believe that he pushed everybody away and he was just he was just isolating, himself and his wife and his daughter, there shouldn't be anybody else's DNA in that house whatsoever, except the dog.
Wait, find out who that DNA belongs to, and you'll find the murderers, I'm sure. And maybe they didn't want to go that far.
So those swabs would be on file, though, right? That unknown DNA?
Yes, it should be.
Jeez, I would think that right there would be enough to open it.
Greg, I can't upload the PowerPoint to the group with my phone.
Okay, that's all right. It's okay.
So I guess the file is too big.
It's okay. Yeah, we'll definitely put that up, though. I'll see if I can shrink it or something. But right now we're looking at slide number 6.
Slide number 6, is that item 57? Wait.
Looks like the comparison.
Yeah, that's important to keep harping on.
Okay.
Let's see, comparison. Comparative comparison of item 31, which is a bullet fragment. This was found over by the window near David's body. This was tested against the fired bullets from item 1 and item 57, and they were performed with the following results. Item 57 against item 31 showed presence of matching features. This means that item 1 fired item 31.
Why didn't they test it with the rest of the bullets? Instead of just that one.
Because that's the only one that matters, apparently.
Yeah, probably.
They should all
But
match, though.
They should all match.
But they never talk about item 57 matching matching to item 30. Sorry. It says that item 31 was fired from item 1, which is the gun, but it never states that item 57 was fired from that gun.
Right.
It said it showed matching features to item 31, but why didn't they say that item 57 was fired from the gun?
If it was a complete match, why wouldn't they say it's a positive match that these two are the same?
Correct.
Why would they word it like they seem to match or something along those lines? If it's a complete match and it's a 100%, this bullet came from this gun, then it should all match completely. All those bullets, all the fragments, all the shell casings, all of it should have the same tool markings as, you know, any bullet fired from the gun, item 1.
That's correct.
Right.
And yet this paperwork doesn't show that for that particular bullet.
And it's not tested against a bullet. It's tested against a fragment, right? So it's like
Yes.
you're testing a bullet against a fragment, and you know it doesn't. I don't know. It's not even a bullet. So is it a fragment of the bullet?
That's right.
And we have another missing bullet, or what?
Why didn't they compare it to the rest of them or any one of the other ones?
Right.
If David did it, they should all match.
Right.
If David was the only one firing a gun in that house, all of the bullets and fragments found at the scene should all match. There should be no doubt whatsoever that all of those were shot out of item 1.
Yep.
And
we're
that's what's
moving
so
on.
frustrating.
Let's go to slide number 7 here, item 57-1.
Item 57-1 is DNA results. So they took one sample of the bullet, and it says male DNA profile matches David Timothy Crowley, does not match Kamel or Rania, would not be expected to occur more than once among unrelated individuals in the population due to insignificant genetic information, no statement on minor types.
It's very blah, very bland. Doesn't match up with a lot of things that they say about the other bullets. I mean, it's just not as detailed. It's almost like 53 and 57 were just kind of rushed along.
Right.
I think this whole thing was rushed along.
Yeah.
And I do
Hard to
apologize
argue with
to I apologize to everybody, but I'm dyslexic, so reading out loud is difficult for me.
Oh, you're doing great. You're fine.
You're doing fine.
You're doing great.
I would not have been able to tell you're dyslexic. You sound amazing.
Thank you. It's just reading that gets me.
There's a lot of that in this.
Slide number 8 here. This is one that you had. Do we know what image number this is? This is the only image that we have that might possibly show that there was a bullet hole in the living room ceiling on January 17th. One photo.
This image I actually got from the group.
Yeah,
but I know it's from the day of discovery because the Christmas tree is still there.
Right. This was part of the BCA. I think this was a part of the maybe the second or the third round of BCA photos. But this is it. I mean, this is all that we really have to really work with right now. But if you compare slide 8 and slide 9, I mean, it looks like the bullet hole was there, no? it's either a shadow, it's a reflection, or it's that hole. It's a very bright area right where that hole should be. And I do have the image number somewhere, so I will make sure to add that to this video.
It says 48 of 77 photos, or 711 photos, excuse me.
Oh, so that's okay. So that's part of the third round then. All right. Yeah, I could find that one. It was taken from the kitchen, and it was zoomed in, I think. But that's it. You almost wouldn't even notice it. So I'm wondering if that's the image that they use, because at some point they came back and said, yeah, there was a bullet hole there. We found it in one of the photos. Maybe this is that photo.
But did all the officers see it on the 17th? And if
Nobody
they did,
saw it on the 17th. Nobody saw it.
Nobody took photos. Not even the
Nobody
DCA
saw it
team.
on the 18th. Nobody saw it from January 17th until February 18th. No law enforcement person, anybody saw it until February 18th when they went in the house. That was the first time. That's a long time.
because logically, if any of them did see it, it would be in their reports, right?
Correct.
And
they're
there was a lot
very
of people.
clear. They do say in their own documents, they do say that they did not see it on the 17th.
I believe it was plenty there.
No, you keep trying
Or
to pressure me into thinking that. No, I'm just kidding.
Or shot up into the ceiling when they visited there on the 19th. The visitors that came in the house.
Yep.
There was
But they
plenty
came
of.
during the daytime, though. I mean, this was, and they were only there for like 20, 30 minutes.
That's long
So
enough.
I guess so, but why go there and shoot a hole into the ceiling?
When they went in, sorry, go ahead.
Well, why even be in that house before it's even cleaned?
Really?
I mean, there's biohazard everywhere. The air is tainted. Why are they in that house? What are they looking
Not only
for?
Not only that, just your constant state of mind.
Well, I remember reading somewhere that they had said they wanted to go in and make sense of that. And one of the questions that came up to me in hearing that was, when they went in that house, was that before or after the police told them about the writing on the wall?
That was before, according to Mason Hendricks. So
they
he walked
saw
into
the writing.
there. They all walked into there, and they had, and the wall was painted white. So they had no idea what was on the wall, according to what he said. But he knew that there was something that was underneath that wall, and I guess only later, I think around January 25th maybe, is when they all found out that what was actually written there. So they don't even know what was written there other than photos, you know. Without that, they wouldn't know. Without those photos, we wouldn't know. They were trying
Who
to
painted
hide
over?
it.
Who painted over the wall? The police did?
The police had that. Well, they must have had the cleaning crew or somebody do it. If what Mason Hendricks is stating was true, then it had to have been done by the cleanup crew, or
the cleanup crew wasn't even there yet.
What day was
They might have been
that
there on the
Mason was in the house?
Say it again.
What day was it that Mason was in the house?
January 9th.
Mason Hendricks, the 19th?
Yes.
The bodies were found on the 17th. The police
That's 2 days
officially
after?
left.
Yeah,
Well, the police left the house Sunday morning, which was the 18th. They went in on a Monday. The cleaners weren't even there yet.
I think cleaner started on the 18th. I could be wrong on that.
need to double check on that because
It just screams weird because that would have stunk, for one, to high heaven. You wouldn't have wanted to be in there without some kind of something over your mouth and nose. It would stink. So why would they want to go in there? What do you mean? It wouldn't stink in the attic?
No, that's where they were, according to what he said. They're
right, but they had to go through into, because the opening to the attic was in the David and Kamel's room, right? In their closet.
There's two.
Oh,
that's definitely. But that's the one that they probably went through. Is because when the police left, there was not a ladder that was leading up to that attic. But when they came there, when they came there on February 18th, there was a ladder there, and the attic was like, I think it was open. I think it was like wide open. So.
Yeah, I read something in the reports about how it was not the one in the bedroom, the attic entry in the bedroom closet was not open. And then when they came back, they pointed out it was open.
Right. So that's another weird thing. Who was in the attic?
But that would have been a month later. So these guys went in there 2 days after this happened, and went and played around in the attic?
When I said it was planted, because they went up in the attic, I think, saying that they were looking for the bullet because they saw the hole in the ceiling.
That's
they're the ones
weird.
that contacted the police, weren't they?
They didn't say anything.
Yeah.
Sorry,
no,
go ahead.
They didn't say anything. You're right. No, you're right. They didn't say anything.
The
When they
police
should.
let them know.
No, the police found the police traced that 911 call from January 19th. They traced that to Chris Klein, and then Chris Klein started telling them stuff, and that's one of the things that Chris Klein told them. So, which is great. I mean, it's great that he did. It and that's what made it seems like Klein didn't really do anything wrong. He told them what they wanted to know. Seems like he was very truthful, because without him, we wouldn't even know that there was a bullet there.
What was he that wasn't there like a report from one of the neighbors or something about a suspicious person being there, and then that was somehow linked to Chris Klein, I think, through his license plate.
Yes.
So who was he in the house with?
Well, he was in the house with Hendricks, with Danny Mason, with David's brother, with I guess about 5 or 6 different people, and they're all there. And I don't know. It's weird that the 911 call only mentions a suspicious person, as in one person, but obviously it wasn't just one person.
Unless this was a later date.
Yeah, maybe they came in later that night or something, because when I first heard about this, I thought it was nighttime, and I thought maybe they were in there for a very long time. But when you look at the 911 call, the person knows when they show up, so you can actually calculate. They have about 20 minutes to be in that house, and that's it. So that's one of the biggest problems that I have with them trying to go in there and add anything to this crime scene, is because, you're taking a big, big risk. Not saying that it's not possible, but it's a big, big risk. But I guess if you got 5 or 6 people, in there with you,
everybody could corroborate everybody else's word.
And they may have all been in.
They would all be bonded from that very point, because now if anybody spoke up, they'd all be part of the crime, be accomplices. That's the worst case, or best case scenario for their accomplices.
You would think if they were in that house and they saw that the police missed that bullet in the ceiling, they would have been asking more questions. It just does not seem plausible at all that they believe the official narrative, given the fact that they were the ones who pointed out this bullet. I mean, not officially, but basically, they saw it when the police had missed it, and they went up into the attic to see it or whatever. So, I mean, you would think if it was you, if you were to put yourself in their shoes and this was your family member and you walked into the crime scene and noticed the police missed something, you would, I would hope, automatically go to, well, if they missed this, what else did they miss? Because we all did that. We all started asking what else did they miss? What else did they miss in the crime scene? And we've all come up with a giant list of inconsistencies.
Yeah, sure.
It's almost as if they wanted to believe the worst. That they wanted to believe that David was the killer. And not ask questions.
You've got to be just so naive, so incredibly naive to just stop. Because everybody, I've talked to my friends and my family members about this case, and every single person I have personally talked to has been like, yeah, that does seem kind of weird. That doesn't seem like he did that. It doesn't seem like it's possible for him to do that. You know, you look at where the bullet hole is in the ceiling, you look at the fact that there's no blood or tissue on it. How can you say that's the bullet that you know David killed himself with if it doesn't have his blood and tissue on it? We know for a fact that Kamel couldn't have been the one to do this because she's got 3 bullets with her DNA and blood and tissue on it.
Mm-hmm.
We know Randy didn't do it. Why can't everybody conclude the same thing with, well, David was right-handed. He shot with his right hand. His right hand is missing. The gun is on his left side. He's laid out in a crucifix position on the floor, and he's not even lined up with the bullet hole.
Right.
The one main consistency with all the police reports is that they all, at least my take on it was the rough sketches they did and like their notes and whatnot, they were all pretty like they all kind of matched up, you know. But you can't, any of these guys, we don't know where they're from or anything like that, what cases they've dealt with before. But any one of them should be trained to walk into a scene and pick out what doesn't match with a suicide. I'm not trained, and just from teaching myself, I can see this doesn't match up with a suicide. You guys can all see it doesn't match up with a suicide. But people who are trained to do this as a career, none of them see a problem with this. That scares the hell out of me for all the people within that police department's jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Amen. Well, I do want to kind of wrap this up here in the next 10 minutes or so. Sophia, are there any other slides here that we should focus on?
It's mainly just the bullet hole, just the ones that the BCA took when they came into the house in February. And then, of course, I added living room photos.
Yeah, let's talk about those for a second. Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me get to that. My device just froze.
Slide number 27, which this is pretty much, this is almost like the same angle of the one image that shows the actual bodies. It's almost as if, this is the after photo, after the bodies were taken out. The dog feces, where the dog feces is interesting too. It's kind of towards the end of this rug. Lots of hair. That stuffed animal too. That's another thing. But why did you choose this image here? I mean, there's so much here.
Well, so that we could kind of get an idea of where David was laying and the girls, as we were talking about the direction of where the bullet had gone. And then the photo after that is the window. So if he had been standing and that bullet would have exited the left side, it most likely would have been either embedded in that wall where they had the gun when they were photographing the gun, or it could have been gone, or it could have gone through the window when it exited. But it's not there. It supposedly did a U-turn and went in the opposite direction.
Well, I mean, doesn't that help us kind of see where this bullet hole, where the bullet was shot into the ceiling? Like it would have had to have been almost at an angle, right? I mean, where would David have to be? He'd almost have to be on the ground.
I feel like for that bullet to actually be the one that he supposedly shot himself with, he would have had to be sitting on the floor, like with his legs extended out, so that it could curve up and do whatever it wants to do, where it did like a U-turn, like Sophia said. I think he would have to be sitting down on the floor for it to be anywhere up in that ceiling.
But for his body to have fallen to where they tell us that it was, he would have had to have been standing when shot. Is that correct?
I feel like in order for his body to fall in that crucifix position, and in order for that bullet to get up into the ceiling, he would have had to shoot himself while sitting, like with his legs out in front of him, like sitting on the floor. And see, I don't even know how it would get up into the ceiling like that. Like he would, I think, to fall in that crucifix position, naturally, he would have had to be sitting down. But then that doesn't line up with the bullet, because if he shot himself and just fell back with his arms outspread, that bullet would not have been up in the ceiling where it was. It would have been over more. It would have been directly lined up with where he was.
Right. It went through this window here.
Right, or went through the window.
Mm-hmm.
What's your take on that? Like, where would he have to be sitting, or standing, or? for it to get up there like that.
Well, if he
to
was
the-
sitting,
to the kitchen.
if he was sitting, it would still be.
Go ahead.
I don't know. If he was sitting, it would still exit out the left side. We can't change that. That's what the autopsy says. So that bullet would be where? Let's see, bookcases, Christmas tree, that wall, possibly,
Mm-hmm.
or the window still. It would still be there. It didn't do a U-turn. So
Bullets do not naturally. They don't. They just don't. They have a specific line that they go in, and that's
and
it.
I just don't see what it could ricochet off of. But gosh, would it still have the momentum to go all the way up through the ceiling into the attic? By that time, it's already exited the skull.
And it
I
would
don't
have
know.
slowed down a good bit. I don't see it bouncing around up there the way it did, unless it was shot just straight up into the ceiling and not went through a person at all.
There you go.
Yeah, that's the only thing that I see. And if it was shot through the ceiling, or just shot from a gun, and it didn't hit anybody, where do you think, Greg, somebody would have to be standing to shoot that?
I think they'd have to be kind of leaning underneath him. If David was standing, they'd have to be towards the kitchen, and he'd have to be kind of towards the kitchen. And I was thinking that maybe his body might have fallen where that recliner was, that his head kind of fell there. But again, that also doesn't line up with with where his body was found either.
Did
So
they
that
test
would also
the blood on that recliner?
No.
They took
But if they
samples,
would
but they
have-
never ran it.
If they would have, it would have proven that somebody's body was moved. There's no way blood can end up there, and the bodies were found the way that they're telling us. Somebody's body was moved. It just has to be. Just has to be. There's no other way that a big blood stain like that is going to get on that recliner. There's no way. So I think maybe that's why they didn't test it. I don't understand why they didn't test it, other than somebody wanted to make sure that it didn't get tested. Not to say that everybody was like, oh, we can't test this. But again, this is a very controlled thing. Once they leave that house, it's a very thin line of who's controlling what gets tested and who's controlling what they do and what they don't do. And that's basically it. Everybody else just goes on to do their other jobs. It's crazy.
What would it take to get a hold of those samples?
An attorney.
Oh.
Or a family member with
or a family
an
member.
attorney. With an attorney. Yeah. But yeah.
And that's kind of problematic.
Anything else here while before we wrap it up?
All I can say is I've been watching the impeachment hearings all day, and that's what this sounds like.
There's some very similar things. The way that they kind of, certain people have treated, David Crowley's case, you could make some strong comparisons, definitely.
Yeah, and it's suspicious.
That's why interpretation is... Sorry, go ahead.
No, I wouldn't worry about the impeachment hearings. There's nothing that's ever going to come from it.
Well, the first
If they
time
make
I've
this-
heard any Democrats talk was today, because I've always listened to Republicans talking. That was ridiculous what I heard today. Outright funny.
It's kind of like listening to the other group.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
Anyway.
I feel like the reason this case has been so open to all these different conspiracy theories is because of all the different extreme tags that the media attach to David. You've got alt-right and New World Order and extremists and all kinds of things attached to him that so many people look at and are like, oh, that's why he did it, because he's crazy.
Right.
But when you look at the people who was connected with David and making this movie, none of them are that. So why is David that?
Right.
I mean, we have a couple of them who are bona fide Freemasons. We have others that voted for Hillary. She's as deep state as you possibly can get. So where was David being alt-right and everything?
There wasn't that term. I'm not even sure that term was even around in 2014, 2013. I don't remember hearing that until after Trump got in office. That's the first time I had heard it, you know.
Yeah, it was 2016 when they started calling us alt-right as a derogatory term. All it was just standing up for our freedom.
I guess he got grandfathered in somehow. I don't know.
Well, that sure was a mixture of people, I'll tell you. They call the police up, and what do you get?
Well, you can learn a lot about how to deal with this case by watching, you know, what's going on with Donald Trump. Definitely, it can definitely help.
Yeah,
it's just like a program. You know, it looks like the same program, just on a lower scale.
Right.
I don't know. I truly believe that slandering a dead person who cannot defend themselves is the lowest form.
I agree.
That's what they say that we're doing. That's what they accuse us of. You know,
slandering
like, really?
David?
Yeah, somehow by asking questions about, you know.
Yeah, that's our group, the Justice for David Crowley group. Anybody who is a member of that is slandering David and Kamel and Rani because we're trying to ask questions when we should just leave it alone. We should just shut up and accept what we were told and not ask anything else.
Well, maybe they shouldn't have made such a shitty documentary.
Yes, I agree with that. That documentary, that really, you look at that and you're like, wait, hold on, what?
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got to do your own research to even try and make sense of anything in that documentary.
But then once you start doing your research, then you're a conspiracy theorist, and you should not be asking questions.
Mm-hmm. There's never been any case that was solved by shutting up and letting it go. Cases get solved by asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the police do all their interviews with all the different people, and they look at all the data, and they look at all the pictures and all the terabytes of stuff that they go through. And that is their investigation. That's what's supposed to lead them to the conclusion of what happened. But sadly, in this case, they just basically went along with what Judy suggested in her 911 call. Murder-suicide.
And why is that?
I don't know. I really have not been able to figure that one out yet. That does not make sense. Collins...
She don't make sense at all, period.
No, she doesn't. She doesn't make sense on a lot of accounts. But, like, Collins I know you guys did a video about this, but Colin's interview, or excuse me, not interview, his phone call to the police was basic. Listen, there's some bodies. We need somebody over here. Judy's was more like bullet points, like you'd said earlier. It sounds like bullet points. Murder, suicide, dog scavenging, gun on the floor. She didn't need to do all of that. And then in her interview, she says that she's not a suspicious person. She's not the type of person that immediately jumps to, a murder or a suicide. Well, then why did you?
Yeah.
That's exactly what you did on the phone, is immediately jump to murder-suicide.
Well, then she also states that she never believed that David had guns in the house, or she didn't know that David had guns. But before, she made a comment about the garage sale and how David supposedly had a gas mask and was pointing the gun. I mean, she made that comment.
And she thought it was weird, and she didn't want the grandkids over there.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So she knew he was a gun exactly. Which is it? Either you knew he was, and you didn't want the grandkids over there because, he's got a bunch of guns and he wears fatigues and he likes to shave his head like many hundreds of thousands of other people. But, you also don't know even his address or phone number.
Well, the thing is David had a mohawk off and on throughout his adult life.
Yep. And you can see that. Yeah.
So this wasn't a new thing. And in the very beginning, I thought it was a new thing. And even if he did have a mohawk, that has no bearing on his mental status.
Not only that, but that's a really big if he had PTSD, why wasn't it somewhere documented? Why wasn't the family saying, listen, I know you guys are asking questions, but, he had a serious issue. Like that would have been something that I would think the family would have been pointing out first and foremost is, hey, he had, mental health issues. This is why he did it. It's not going to make sense. But they haven't said that. The PTSD, if there's no history of it, it's literally just hearsay.
Mm-hmm.
You can't say he just snapped if there's no history of it. Kamel should have had something in her notebooks about it. She should have. There would have been a trail somewhere if he actually had PTSD. And no, that's not really anybody's business if he had PTSD or not. But it would help. Honestly, if there was documentation that said he had PTSD, I would probably lean a little bit more towards, yes, he did it, if not for the fact of all the other inconsistencies.
Right.
Well, not everybody with PTSD it doesn't lead up to a double murder and suicide. I mean, I have PTSD from an accident that happened when I was in the service. And I have not snapped and killed my family.
But with you, there's documentation. Like, because of what you went through, you have post-traumatic stress disorder. Or is that what it is?
Yeah, well, yeah. And the thing is if David was bad enough to have PTSD enough to where he would have snapped and he was unstable, why was he even making a movie that was so violent? Why was he over at the gun ranges shooting his guns nonstop? And
yeah, you would think that would be a big trigger for him if he actually had PTSD. I know guys who have PTSD that they can't have ceiling fans in their house because the ceiling fans give them issues, like flashbacks and stuff. Yes. So if David had PTSD, how was he able to make this gruesome movie?
I'm just not buying that at all. Especially when people are saying, oh, it was so bad enough to where he snapped. I have some pretty bad PTSD when I'm in the car and I see a vehicle coming up pretty fast behind me. That's what happened. I was on duty and I had a really, really bad car accident and head injury because of that. And there are times when I will have a freak out, like anxiety, but you just move on.
But there would be a record of it with David.
Yeah,
there would be some sort of record of it. And there's not. So that can't even be counted as any kind of evidence.
I have military records from another individual who was accused of killing his stepson. These military records talk about his history, the medals that he earned, things that he was written up for while in the military. We have nothing like that in regards to David's military. So
I hadn't thought about that. Now that you mention it, that is quite odd.
All we have is DD-214. And it does clearly say that it was David and that he served, but we have nothing else. And like I said, I have somebody else's military records from another case, and it's very detailed. And, I mean, maybe it's different because the person actually stood trial.
The fingerprints they got from the military, if they've got that print record, is that how they matched it to the print on the clip, the magazine, the gun magazine?
I believe so. And they would have been able to get his DNA from the military, too.
Yeah, they actually got his print from the FBI.
But didn't the FBI get it from?
Correct. They might have, right.
Is that just the chain of command of how you obtain records?
I honestly don't know on that one.
I mean, you would have to get it from somewhere. I mean, the first place I would go is there, where he served. But in California, all of our driver's licenses, since I think about around that time, 2014, you had to have your fingerprint on your driver's license. I don't know about in David State or in Texas, but it sounds like they were able to get his fingerprints pretty quickly.
Ours are in a database.
Yeah, apparently his DNA was. I don't know.
So if his DNA was already in the database, why did they need to collect samples at the scene to confirm?
Well,
maybe that's, I don't know, maybe that's a dumb question.
They took it from his body. They didn't collect a sample from the scene. So they didn't take hairbrushes or toothbrushes. They took it directly from him and Camille and Amy.
Okay.
They took it from the bodies that they found at the scene, right?
Yes, they took it from the bodies that they found at the scene.
Yeah,
but they did that during the autopsies.
During the autopsies, okay.
So did they match that to his military record?
No, they didn't.
I don't know.
So see that's where it popped up that this was a witness protection kind of thing.
Mhm.
Right.
Excuse me.
And maybe that's why the FBI was involved.
Even though we were told that they weren't.
Well, it's just weird that the military wouldn't just send it to them. They had to have an outside source.
Right. That's what I thought was weird. Is I always kind of assumed that to get military records, you would just call whatever branch of the military they're in. Be like, hey, I need this record for whatever reason.
Well, I mean, I thought that they would have to go through the Pentagon at least and say, hey, I need that. And then, but I don't understand why the FBI had to be the go-between. Maybe somebody can explain it for us.
Maybe they were watching David. That would make the most sense, is that they had already knew who David was since 2012, and the FBI probably already had a file on him, possibly.
Probably.
It would be good to know how we could get the FBI file on David, if they have one.
See, why are they watching him but not anybody else?
Yeah. David himself said in a clip from that documentary that, you know, veterans are the ones that are being watched.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly believe that. I have no doubt that anybody who signs up for any kind of gun permit is put into a database. Any kind of license that you buy, or you buy a gun or anything like that, that's all put into a database. That's why you have to give your driver's license in order to get a gun permit. That's why they make so many different, you know, forms of identification that you have to present to them to prove who you are before they give you a gun. And I don't know how it is in Minnesota, but I know here in New York it's damn near impossible to get a concealed carry license. But David was taught by the military how to shoot and kill. And somehow he managed to miss the dog and fall in a crucifix position where it just doesn't make sense. I don't know. It just does not make sense.
He was at the gun range quite often.
That bullet, item 7 was the bullet that jammed. So apparently at some point his gun jammed. Or something, right? Because there was a bullet found there.
That was the bullet on the carpet?
Yeah. They never tested that to see, just to make sure that David's DNA was on the bullet. His DNA should be on all of the bullets.
Right, because it's his. He supposedly did this. So
he loaded
there again,
supposedly.
Because he loaded it. Right, exactly. So how long does someone's DNA, how long would it stay on a bullet? If I were to put to load a magazine, not a clip, but if I were to load it, how long would my DNA stay on there?
Theoretically, it should be on there until wiped off, or after an extremely long period of time, it would degrade.
If it goes through something.
If it goes through something, I mean, if it's fired, theoretically when it's fired, you know how like there's, I can't describe it, it's like smoke or whatever comes through the barrel. So it would be hot enough to burn DNA off of it. And that's why the attic bullet doesn't make sense unless somebody had put it up there after David had handled it.
Put his DNA up there?
I mean,
No, put the bullet up there.
Oh.
see, okay, let's do this theoretically. David's at a gun range. He's been firing his gun all day long. He goes over there to wherever he was, like the target, and pulls out one of the bullets, and he's handling it. Then one of the guys collects it, and later on, after they're dead, plants it up to the attic. This
Amen.
is all hypothetical.
But if you think about it, if they are willing to commit this crime, you can't really discount them willing to go up into the attic and place this bullet there. Whoever, they may be, if they're willing to commit such a crime like this, who's to say that they wouldn't go back and, I don't know, want to relive it and then go, oh, wait, they didn't find anything connected to him, so let's just pop this up there.
Right on.
But how do they know they didn't find anything connected to
Right.
David?
When-
This
when
happened
did they
2
get
days.
this? When did
They
they
would
get this?
have to have somebody on the inside. If
Correct.
And
Right.
see, that's a whole nother hole. That's a whole nother rabbit hole there.
The more you look into this case, the more rabbit holes there are. And right now we're just talking theoretically because nothing makes sense. That attic bullet is not the one that killed David.
I still am hung up on how that blood writing got up on the wall without any kind of drips or anything. Like they would have had, whoever did that would have had to collect it somehow from Kamel and take it over to the wall and like dip their hand in it and do the letters. And to me, it looks like if you look specifically at, I think it's the L's in Ala'u, it looks like one of the L's looks like a right hand going one way, and then the other L, to me, it looks like the hand was flipped onto the back of it to wipe down the other L. And I mean, if you theoretically, if somebody else did this and they had David's hand already cut off, they're not going to do it with their own hand for, fear of leaving their own DNA, so they're going to do it with David. They're going to do it with David's hand, and they would have to dip it in Kamel's blood somehow to write it on the wall like that.
All these
But
bodies
if
were bled out.
If it was David's hand, it would have left skin cells, and it didn't. It was only Kamel's DNA.
But these bodies were all bled out, weren't they?
I don't know.
So they could.
That would be interesting to find out.
I think they were.
I didn't ever read that in the paperwork.
I think Catherine's the one that told me that.
Yeah,
When she
yeah.
was
I
going
think that was
through
one of the. Yeah, Pansy's right. That was one of the early things. Was that where's the blood? Right, there should have been a lot more blood. So I think that's
There
where
should have
that came from.
Because they were talking about that hose in the bathtub, wondering if that's how they bled them out. But that hose was too little. It would have taken some time to have done that.
Well, if Kamel was bled out in like a bathtub, wouldn't they be able to spray luminol on it and see the pattern?
Did they though?
Yeah, but that bathtub, I mean, just looking at it, it looks very old. It doesn't look like anybody had ever been in it. And you have to remember, David built that. So at the most, that whole bathroom is one year old. I think it might have been, maybe six months maximum, but I don't think it was done either. He was still working on it, but he built that whole bathroom and everything, and I think that's why it looks kind of dirty. It's almost like it's not even ready. But
well,
then,
it may not have been new fixtures either.
His DNA, his
Sure.
DNA should be all over this entire house.
Correct.
Which it
should
probably
be.
is,
He
but
lived
they
there.
didn't. But they weren't testing it. They weren't looking for it. That's the whole thing, right? I mean, how little of David's of his DNA that they were actually looking for. I think, you know.
Well, when you think about the wall being tested, the samples that they did test should have shown his DNA if he wrote that on the wall with his hand.
They swabbed 2 samples and only tested 1.
And the same thing for the computer, too. When they swabbed the computer and tested that should have shown up with David's DNA mixed in, but it was only Kamel's DNA. If he used that computer often, his skin cells
Would be all over it.
yeah.
His fingerprints would be all over it.
Yeah, there should have been some mixture of his DNA in that swab that they took, unless he had gone through and wiped everything down and then touched stuff with Kamel's blood.
Which, if he did this, why would he care enough
To do that.
Yeah.
This case doesn't make sense logically. It's a conundrum.
It is.
It is.
I really think that's a great place for us to kind of end this one here tonight, because we've come full circle, basically.
Yeah.
But once I get a few glitches fixed out, maybe next Thursday we can come back and have another chat here.
Oh my God!
Hopefully you guys will have your power back.
That I finally got to do this. I can't wait to do another one.
Awesome.
Thank you guys so much. Because looking at it by yourself is one thing. Being able to talk to other people who have looked at the same material that you have, it's so intriguing to hear your guys' take on this. Like every video you guys have done, I'm just like, man, these people, these are my kind of people.
Nice.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad that we helped, because this case is something else.
May not ever figure it out.
Nope.
Yeah.
Keep trying. Keep trying.
Right.
And Greg, I want to thank you so much. You've done so much research on this case. That's very commendable. I really respect every single person who has put their time into this. You know,
yeah, there are many people who never get credit. You know what I mean? But there are many.
Yes.
People.
Sophia does a good job too.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes, you do. Oh man.
Thank you.
I was looking at the stuff you posted. I think it was Sunday, and that I'm not so good at understanding what exactly they mean in all these different forensic reports. So when you guys break it down and like explain what it means or your take on it, that really helps me kind of understand it. It would be amazing to get like an actual forensic scientist of some sort on this.
That would be amazing to get somebody to give us their take on it, to actually look at everything and not see that documentary. Because
that can happen too, and that's one of the things that we keep praying about and we keep searching for. Definitely.
Well, we might have some answers by the end of December in regards to that. I know.
What's happened to Dan?
Dan,
Greg?
What's Dan doing now?
oh, I mean, he's still with us. He's still with us. He just wrote the foreword to my book. So
Really?
yeah, he's
Well, then
yeah,
he's been
still
busy.
here.
Okay.
Yeah, he is.
I didn't know you
Yeah.
guys were both working on that together. That's pretty awesome.
Well, I had asked him to write the foreword, and he wrote it, and yeah, I thought it was great. I think people are going to like it.
That's good. That's good.
And Greg,
He's
your
still
book
here.
is amazing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we're going to try to spread that one. I'm going to try to hit some local festivals and things, and just try to pass it out and do anything that I can to help keep this case alive until we can.
And see, that's
real.
the biggest thing, is keeping this case alive. Because there's so many that are willing to just write it off as he was a psycho and just let it go. It needs to be kept alive because there are so many inconsistencies. And with all the work everybody has done on this, it's just mind-boggling that we're 4 or 5 years now?
5 years. Yep, almost 5.
Almost 5 years now since this happened, and geez, I would think there would be more interest in this.
It's steadily growing. The interest in this case really took off after the documentary came out, and that was a bunch of people who are like us and saying that this documentary didn't make sense, that we were just lied to, and they come to the group seeking answers. And a lot of people don't really respond to the group, but they'll email or PM Greg and Catherine and I see that they will look at the files and stuff like that. So as long as we have people who are actually looking and asking questions, that's amazing. And I really think that Greg's book is going to help a lot of people with understanding the research documents and what happened, the play-by-play. So he did a great job putting the police reports and everything into his own words. And I keep saying it, but I really think it's going to help people understand this case a little bit more.
I hope so, because you look at all the clips and stuff that they smashed together in the documentary, and you're left with more questions. And with the videos that Greg and Catherine and Dan have done, and even the conversations with all the people from the group, you guys, we really stick to facts. Like, yes, we do have our discussions of, well, what if this and what if that, but we're not saying shut up and stop looking. And that's the biggest thing. We are all encouraging people to look, to ask questions, to do their own research. Greg, I can't even remember how many different videos that you've done that you've told people, don't take my word for it. Look this stuff up yourself. And that is really the only thing we can keep saying is do your own research. Look it up. Make your own opinions on it.
And I have put all the files into the group along with Greg and Dan. They've all done that. So everything is there. And if there's something that you need and we haven't, just ask us. We are happy to share whatever we have. And for those of you out there saying that information is being hidden from the group, send out your own FOIAs and request that information, and you'll find that we put everything in there.
And if you don't know how to submit the FOIA, I'm sure anybody who's done it already would be more than willing to
course.
point you in the right direction.
I'm happy to write it up for you guys. I've done it before. I have the stuff saved, the laws and everything. I can write it up for you, send it to you. You can send out for your own information. So we're here to help. We want everybody to be involved, to research, to read, to ask questions, and come to your own conclusions. So,
Yes.
sorry, didn't mean to get preachy there.
That's great. So hopefully we can all come back here Thursday and try to do something more live.